What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Female Bodybuilding Girls in Gear. I'm your host, Tommy Stiles. With me, as always, Shannon Seeley. And today we are joined by women's physique competitor and coach, Emily Nosler. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you guys for having me.
Before we get into this, like, share, comment, subscribe. Make sure you're following the Muscle Media Network on YouTube and on Facebook. If you want to join the Muscle Media Network Facebook group, it is Muscle Media Network. Request approval to get joined, and one of us will let you in. Thanks to our sponsor, Kodiak Bodybuilding Apparel. Train hard, die strong. Code is in the description below, MMN at checkout. So Emily, you're coming to us from Michigan. Shannon's also in Michigan. I'm from Michigan originally, out in Arizona now. So little murder mitten reunion here. So diving into this, how long have you been in bodybuilding? How long have you been competing?
My first show was in 2017. That was just obviously first show, just kind of jumping into it, seeing if I really like it or not. But I decided in 2012 that I was going to be an Olympian bodybuilder. So I just immediately, as soon as I saw the first picture of a bodybuilder, which was Nicole Wilkins, I was like, that's going to be me. So I've been going for it ever since. I don't know if I see Olympia for me anymore, but maybe we'll see if I'm still in love with it when the time comes, but I'm just trying to get my pro card right now. So that's my focus right now.
Awesome. Do you have any like athletic background leading up into when you wanted to become a bodybuilder? Anything sports, powerlifting, anything like that?
Yeah, I did a lot of sports growing up. Elementary was like softball, wrestling, football. And then middle school, I did wrestling. And then in high school, I did wrestling, swimming, track, and gymnastics. So kind of dabbled in everything. And really the thing that I liked about the sports was the training. And I loved just the conditioning, like being sore, like pushing myself. And so in the middle of high school, I decided to get a gym membership. I begged my mom for a gym membership, and I ended up going in the morning at 5 a.m. And then I went after school too. I walked from my school to the gym, and it just became a complete obsession. So I fell in love right away. Even before I started actually training in a gym, I was like fully in love with it. And I had a strength and conditioning class in high school, and that was my special place. Like everyone was asking me the questions about how to train. I was like the go-to person in high school because people were really seeing my passion for it. So just kind of continued.
Awesome.
Did you do when you transitioned, you started doing bodybuilding, did you do women's physique first, or did you dabble in figure to begin with?
I did do women's physique first, and I honestly shouldn't have, but it was kind of like it was for fun anyway for me. And so I was like, I'm going to do a routine because I knew I was going to be able to do a routine at the state level show. And that was like something I was so excited to do because I love creating routines and performing in front of people. So yeah, I placed last. There was five people and I placed fifth, but I loved being on stage, and I people cheered so loud for my routine. Like they really loved it. So I think that was another thing that kept me going was like, man, like I love like being in the light, being center stage. So
So are you pursuing women's bodybuilding or are you pursuing women's physique?
women's physique.
Okay. I mean, I follow you. I see like you have a good bit of muscle. Like it's not, it looks like the condition keeps getting better show to show. When was the last time you competed?
2022. And it was North Americans. That was with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I got eighth place, and that one really lit a fire in me because I pushed myself further than I've ever pushed myself before as far as leanness. Still wasn't quite lean enough, but it really just the hunger that gave me. I was like, eighth is not gonna work for me. Like we're gonna come back and we're gonna steal this, and no matter how long that takes is fine. I'm fine with waiting years. I'm almost 2 years since then, so as long as it takes. My coach is his Cameron Cheek, and the way he does things is, he won't let you compete until you're going to win. And so I don't know, I have body dysmorphia still. So when I look at myself, I think some days I think I'm big. I think, wow, maybe I'm too big now. And then some days I'm like, I am tiny. I am not even close. Because last time when I got lean for that show, I was like, I'm like a string bean. Like what? Like I was so much smaller than I thought I was going to be. And I think I did lose some muscle, which, you know, obviously is going to happen anyway, but I just was so much smaller than I thought. And I really don't want that to happen again. So I guess I'm kind of like overcompensating now, just, you know, trying to get as much mass as I can. So when I do cut, my body can preserve some of it.
So we've talked a lot on this podcast about long off seasons and the need to take time away from the stage. What do you think the hardest part of that is for you?
Honestly, I just really miss like just being on stage and having some like the goal to work for. But I've just gotten really used to my routine of being in the off season. So I know it's just something that it's going to happen one day, and it's fine to just put my head down and push right now. But you know, prep, having something to work for, obviously I'm still working for it now, but having it so close and having it, everything be so, you know, on point and just putting so much into it. I love waking up, doing fasted cardio. I just love the drive in each day that you have when you're in prep. Like the struggle, I miss the struggle. If I was in prep right now, I probably would say I love the off season and I miss that. So it's like always grass is greener type of situation. But yeah, seeing my body obviously get more fat on it isn't super fun, but I, you know, I love myself and I like my fat on my body. I feel like it's just more feminine, you know, it looks, you know, the lady parts come back. And so I just embrace that part of it.
I will say with you, Emily, and you know, we both follow you on Instagram. You're very transparent with your on seasons and your off seasons. You even talk about how you're feeling mentally, and I think that's such a good thing to do, especially because you're, you know, one of the top in the amateur. That it's something that people look at you and be like, wow, she's not just gonna post her lean pictures all year. And we need to see this, you know, like I'm in my off season. I feel, you know, we're all working towards a goal, but it does suck as a female when we have abs and we're ripped for, you know, the duration of prep. And like we're prepping through summer, we're in Michigan, like Michigan summers are the bomb. Like it sucks, but it's one of those things, like you have an end goal and it's one of those things that you just have to keep that on your head. But I will say that I admire that so much about you, especially being younger in the sport, you just being openly transparent, be like, yo, this is what I'm doing. So that's, you know what, as much as you might not think, like you're just like, oh, I have no end, like you're really helping out a lot of females by doing what you do. And no, there's a lot of pros that do that too. Like Emily Schubert, like I admire her for being those transparent, and the transparency really what helps build the community of the sport and not just posting that you're lean all year round. And I think that's so
Um,
admirable for you to do. And I think more of us should do that just so they like, hey, we look like normal female. We do. We look like normal females in the like in the off
yeah,
season. We can carry femininity very well.
yes, exactly. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Um, moving forward a little, so you did your first show in 2017 was your first official time you stepped on stage.
Yes.
Did you do it naturally for your first show?
No.
No. What? So talk to us a little bit about, you were talking about bodybuilding in 2012. Did you, how, talk us to the process, I guess, from there. You know, don't take up 2 hours of it, but talk to us about the process of when you wanted to, how you got into it, how you made that decision to use PEDs. You know, just briefly, because that's a huge step, and it could, you can be on. You know, if it's one of those like I didn't know what I was doing, I just took it. It happens. We've heard every story, but I'm just curious to see how you got with that journey.
Yeah, so like I said, I came across a picture of Nicole Wilkins, and that I thought I saw myself as her. Like I thought I could do that. And so basically when I graduated high school, that was my only goal was to just do bodybuilding. And I didn't know that like all the Olympians are, you know, obviously on gear. Had no idea. And I was like with this group of guys at the gym that I was just always, you know, seeing there. And they were like, what do you want to look like? Show me a picture. And I showed them, you know, like obviously the best. And they're like, oh, they're on gear. They're all on gear. And I'm like, what? Like it blew my mind. And I was like, well, I'm definitely gonna take it then. You know, because like if that's what it takes to do that, to look like that, I'm gonna do it. And I didn't care. I did kind of know that there was going to be possible side effects. but I honestly didn't care. I just wanted it so bad. I didn't think I would turn into a man. I didn't think that was like, that would happen. So that wasn't like super prevalent on my mind. I was thinking more like can't have kids or something, which at that time I didn't want kids and I didn't care. Now I do. So thank goodness I didn't like ruin that for myself, hopefully, so far. But yeah, I mean, I did have coaches. I did have like several coaches and they told me how much to take, what to take, and I just trusted them. I really, there wasn't a lot. I did try to research a little bit, but there really wasn't a lot for women. It was mostly all just for men. So I was like, guess we're just going to see what happens. And I figured that, if I did start to have side effects, I could reduce it or just stop. And so that was my plan going into it. And then, yeah, I pretty much just took Anavar for a long time. And then I think one of my coaches told me to take D-ball, D-ball or Winnie, I couldn't remember, but I only took it for a few days and my voice started to change and crack. And so I just stopped taking it immediately because I was like shook by that. I was like, I was young. So I was like, I don't know if that's something I want. But then, yeah, over time, my voice did slowly start to change a little bit and I was fine with it. That was more like 2021 is when I really started to notice my voice changing. And yeah, I was taking different compounds at that time. I think that's when I started taking Primo. And yeah, I said that's when Primo and NPP started integrating into my life. And that's when I've slowly had the most side effects. It was mostly my voice just cracking a lot and stuff like that. Obviously, clit enlargement kind of happened over the course of those years. And obviously more so the more I took, and then on Primo and NPP, it seemed to be more so. And then my last cycle was the most side effects I've ever seen, and also the most growth I've ever had. So to me, it was worth it, but it was kind of a reality check on, okay, how far are we going to take this? Because like I said, I do want to have kids one day, and I still have my period. So luckily, I think I'm good. So that's important to me. That's the most important thing. If I took away my own ability to have kids, like to me, that's my purpose, is to be a mother. So that's not worth it to me. And that's why I say I don't know if Olympia is on the table anymore, because I just don't know if it's worth it. And also, I do feel my face, my jaw started to change slightly through my last probably 3 years, just kind of slowly, of course. I did get a little more acne. I'm trying to think of what else. But yeah, the jaw change kind of shook me a little bit too, because I don't know if I'm willing to risk my face.
Now, do you set thresholds? And I know like you use some compounds that I wouldn't touch myself. So do you set thresholds or like boundaries of like when because did you switch coaches? Were you with a different coach in 2022, or have you been with Cameron forever?
No, I've only been with him for probably the last 6 months.
Okay. Do you set boundaries when you start a new coach? Be like, hey, I don't like this compound. This makes me have this. Can we try something else? Are you very communicative with that?
It's not so much compounds. I more say like the side effects that I
Okay.
don't
Okay.
want, and we just kind of gauge those,
I will
see.
say that it's very. I was when I started bodybuilding, I didn't want kids, but I still kept it in the back of my head, and I think it's really important that you brought that up because that's one thing I'm a huge advocate for is like you can do both. You can like I'm telling you, you can still make it to Olympia and be a mom and have babies. All right, like I have a child who's 4. I've been bodybuilding for over a decade. You just have to set your limits and just know that. And this is for you. This is for everybody. Like you can go far in this sport. It might take you a little bit longer if you're not willing to put certain stuff in your body. And that's totally okay because you got to look at your long-term health and your long-term like viability of how you're going to look. I mean, when I'm 70, realistically, I'm not going to be bodybuilding, but I also want to look like I'm an aging woman and not being like, hey, is that a man or a woman there as they're walking down the
Right.
street? So that's huge. And I mean, for you to be self-aware of like what your body is going through and the changes and side effects is very, very important. And for you to be like, no, wow, I've been taking this for 2 days and my voice is changing. I'm done. Like that's important because stuff like that, T and I just talked about, if you notice it right away, most of the time it's reversible or it hasn't done enough damage that you can just kind of be like, okay, walk away from it. Where if you're running it for 5 weeks, you're in the midst of prep and you don't like the side effects, well, too bad, because if you go off of it now, it's going to cause more damage than it has. Um, so do you, like, right now in your off season, like, does your coach have you cycle on and off stuff even through your off season growth? Are you on anything right now? Are you kind of natural right now?
Just HRT right now. I had pretty low hormones, so we're just trying to get them up to a normal level. Well, hopefully a higher level, just because it's more effective, you know. But yeah, I haven't taken anything for a while,
Okay.
like 3 months or more, maybe. Yeah, it's sad. I can't wait to get back on, but I am in a health phase and I have had some issues. I had really high cortisol. We were trying to figure out what that's doing to me because I have had zero appetite whatsoever and I'm not eating very much. So we're trying to figure out what's happening with that. Is it just the high stress or is it something with the gut? My digestion seems normal, so it's definitely weird, but my life is pretty stressful right now. So I've been working to just try and reduce stress as much as possible. Been meditating, that's my new thing, and it's really changed my life actually. So highly recommend meditating to be with yourself and just, calmer and deal with life better. It really helps.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole podcast on its own of just working to lower your stress. I feel like a broken record to my clients every week that are in prep or just in different phases of life about stress management. So backing up a little bit, the way you described how you got into taking PEDs, now someone might listen to that and that sounds reckless or that's, but I'm glad that you painted it the way you did because that's not abnormal. That's to dive right in and just see what happens isn't wrong and it's not abnormal. Like that's how I was. That's
That's how
how
I was.
that's how
Yeah.
Shannon was. I know a lot of girls who just got into the deep end and figured out what things gave them side effects. They took things too far for their own liking and then pulled back. I'm not advocating that you do that, but I'm also if you're going to try to like do this, go into PEDs and go up 1 milligram at a time or these small, like, and you have big, large goals of turning pro or beyond that, I don't think you're going to get there. I mean, everybody has their own limits that they have to learn and set, but you almost have to go past what your limits are to learn what your limits are. Does that make sense? So
Yes.
I just wanted to point that out for anyone listening that if that sounds reckless, like it's really not. It's just some people don't have fear about certain things. I've never been scared about anything that I've done within bodybuilding in terms of drugs. I've just dove right in, figured it out. When I had to fix stuff, if my blood pressure was through the roof, I fixed it. But
Yeah.
sometimes you have to figure out where your limits are and what you personally like and don't like based
Yeah.
off taking things too far.
I'm
You
proud
know
of
what's
myself.
interesting is
Sorry.
that you say that because when I got into it, my biggest fear, and everyone's gonna laugh because I have tattoos and stuff, but I am terrified of needles. And I didn't start with an oral when I got into PEDs. I went right into injectables.
Really?
So me being 18 years old and getting into these and just going right into injectables, that's one that's already traumatizing enough. And number two, I'm a female, so I don't even know where to inject. So that was a huge, huge thing as a female too, because it happens. I mean, most females do both. Um, but there's a
Yeah.
lot more with women because we hold fat in different areas, so we have a little bit more areas that we can puncture to an extent. But at the same time, is we also have a lot of more areas that have fat. So if you keep using those same injection sites, we're more prone to oil buildup and just a lot more stuff. So that's one of those things too. Is I mean, I'm just telling you guys, like that was my biggest fear when I started PEDs was the needles. So
Yeah,
and it
I
happens.
scared.
People think that women don't. Like, women have to do injectables too. Most women do injectables and orals just along with men. Men do orals and injectables as well.
I wish I would have done injectables instead of orals because antiviral just harms your body so much, like your organs. And yeah, and also I think like the other stuff is more effective too. And I just like blew up on the other stuff. So I'm like, man, if I would have started with that, I would be so much further. But live and learn. And at
It's
least I
awesome.
wasn't reckless with D-ball. And like I said, I tried that and I noticed, bad effects. So I stopped. And I'm thankful for that because I was all or nothing and I could easily see myself like, fuck it, you know? But I was
See,
also, sorry, I was
I will
also,
say though, you were smart. You were smart though with Anavar. I will say that. Like, I think that didn't push you away from the sport because when I did injectables, I put on 40 pounds in 2 months, but it wasn't muscle. Like it was primarily fat. So so for me is that took me 3 years to like have like build this relationship up with PEDs. Like, no, it can help because it made me fat as fuck for like 2 years. I was walking around at 200 pounds at 5'5". Like I did not enjoy
oh
that. I
my
was a big
goodness.
girl.
Shannon was massive.
Shut
You
up, T.
need to find some of those peak off-season pics and post them.
I think I deleted them all. I know everyone just wants to see them. I'll dig them up. I think I got some of my old PC. Pull them up.
I do want to see
Shannon was the OG of off-season bulk.
that.
I was like the lead. I was like the female lead priest.
It was
Like I didn't
impressive.
even care.
So, I mean, we've talked about side effects. We've talked about things that you've experienced. I think sometimes these podcasts, we make it sound like so bad, but what are the positives? What did you notice that was good about going on gear? You can describe different compounds. Like, what do you like about using PEDs? Because there's a good side. There's a reason we all keep doing them. Like they're fun.
Yeah.
They work.
So like on Anavar right away, like my shoulders were just like so full, like the craziest shoulder pump I've ever had. You know, I was starting to see like vascularity. Well, it took a while to get to that point. That was like before show, but I did get like just huge, awesome pumps that I've never had before. And it wasn't just shoulders, but I feel like my shoulders look different when I'm on cycle. Like they look a lot bigger and more full. And so that was one of the main things that I noticed. And I feel better, like happier, affects my mood. I'm more confident, like everything. Sex drive, it goes up, which yeah, it's already fine, but but it's fun, you know. I'm not trying to like be too out there with it, but yeah, I mean all sorts of aspects, you know, are positive with it, but mostly improvements. Obviously, putting on muscle faster. I did carry a lot of water with Anavar, but I didn't care that much just because I still had the roundness and fullness of the muscle. And then like with Primo and NPP, I pretty much only have ran them together. So I don't know what they do separately. But just the amount of mass I can put on with those so quickly. The strength, oh my gosh, the strength. I can't believe I almost forgot the strength. Strength goes up like a lot. It's fun, you know, because training has always been my favorite part of bodybuilding from the beginning. You know, it's never been hard for me to go to the gym and work hard. And so to see those weights go up to levels I never ever thought I would reach is just, it makes you feel like a superhero, you know?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
100% with all those. I'll say that too. And I love my recovery. I was just telling T, like, it sucks when you're not on anything and you're working out. The recovery
Oh
just
yeah.
blows.
You
Yeah.
talked about training. I mean, I looked at your page. You're pretty strong. So we always try to highlight training too, you know, outside of just using PEDs. You know, some of the biggest, most conditioned females in all the divisions are also the hardest training, strongest. You know, they train intense, they train hard, they train with the screw loose. You know, I
Yeah.
saw that you had 405 on your back for a few reps sometime last year. So talk about your training a little bit. Is it just innate in you to like go in there and try to load up as much weight as you can and train hard and heavy? Or were you taught that?
That's how it started. I just like got obsessed with just seeing how much I could push. But over time, I kind of, there was like evolutions to it. I feel like I did like way too many reps, like for a long time, like probably overtrained, but I was also doing some heavy stuff too, just like, you know, not as much reps. I would kind of do both. But then like probably a year ago now, well, maybe a little less, I started doing Nick Bloff's training, and it's like way different. You know, it's like all about tempo and control and like really focusing and really squeezing and just like performing everything correctly. So weight had to go down on a lot of things, well, on some things before it could go back up. But I do feel like it makes a bigger difference. like I can see it more in my growth. That's how I've grown the most that I ever have, was when I was doing his training, which I still am. So, but I'm in a health phase, so it's not fun anymore. But yeah, that's how it's been for most of my training, has just been how much can I do? And I love squatting, was always my favorite, like just seeing how much I can possibly do, because it was my favorite because it was my strongest lift. I've always hated deadlifts because it was my weakest lift. My bench got pretty good for a minute there. I actually dabbled in powerlifting for a little bit. I did a 2-month powerlifting prep, and then I did a meet and I actually won it. And I was like, dang, like maybe I could really do this. So I was going to do both sports. I was going to be a dual athlete, but after North Americans, I decided that I got to put 100% effort into bodybuilding, because in my mind, I was like, I could do both, but if it took away anything from bodybuilding, it wouldn't be worth it to me. So I decided to just choose bodybuilding. And there are days where I go in the gym and I just want to bench and I want to squat and I just want to do heavy stuff. I want to do like 2 reps just to be like, just to see what I can do. But it's just not my goal, so it's not important right now.
I think the training, the way you're winning about your training is, I think that's the most efficient personally, is just to get as strong as you can and not be so obsessive about form, and then reel everything in, kind of strip everything down, and then relearn everything on the way up with better form and better mind, muscle, and all that. But the only way you're going to put on size is if you focus on strength. And I think the biggest issue I see with girls and guys is just the reluctance to go into the gym and get really fucking strong. That should be the goal for the first 3 to 5 years of training, and then start to figure out, what's moving the weight, some of the biomechanics, nerdy stuff. I guess there's value to that for sure. I've done the same with my training, but you're not going to build the foundation with that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I was never afraid of the weight room. That's one thing I am proud of about myself. I think it's because my dad kind of got me into weightlifting, and because I did football and wrestling, like with all guys. I was the only girl on the team. So I was like not intimidated by walking into a gym full of guys like grunting and whatever. Like the things that people are scared of. I wasn't afraid of being judged. I didn't know what I was doing either, but I would try and I would ask for help. And if somebody saw me doing something wrong, they would teach me how to do it. And I was grateful for that. I never felt judged or worried or anything like that. What's interesting is I started with like just doing leg workouts and abs. Like I just wanted abs and nice legs. And of course, a whole bunch of cardio. Like I feel like that's where like a lot of girls start.
Yeah, glutes is the new rave too. Glutes.
Yes.
You talked a little bit
No.
about earlier, body dysmorphia. I think every bodybuilder has some little form of it, or some, is affected by it some way or another. What does that look like for you? Is it your perception of yourself, or are you comparing yourself to other females?
So I used to definitely compare to other females. But now I'm in a place where I am really happy with my body in all stages. To be honest with you, when the body dysmorphia comes in is when we're talking about bodybuilding and how well I would do. Like I feel confused about it a lot. Just like I said, like some days I just feel small and I feel like if I got shredded right now, I'd be tiny. And some days I just feel huge and I'm like, man, I should compete soon. But so it's just like, it's kind of hard for me to look at myself and really know, like place myself. I could place anybody else. If I saw pictures of them, I'd be like, oh yeah, like you're ready to compete right now. You're going to do great. But for me, I really don't know. Like day to day, it changes, especially right now in a health phase. Like I feel like I'm shrinking and I feel really small right now. So
I was going to ask you this. So because you started out, you were wrestling first and then you went into bodybuilding, like it's interesting because did you have to cut for wrestling? Did you have to cut to make weight? So
yeah.
how was that? Because it's interesting. And sometimes I talk to wrestlers and they'll be like, oh yeah, I feel your pain, you're cutting. And I'm like, no, man, like you get to do yours for 2 days. I got to do mine for two years. Like, so
Yeah.
how was that transition? Like, did you have any idea how the cutting process was from a bodybuilder compared to when you were wrestling?
No, I did not know. Just like
Okay.
Wrestling, I just like starved myself pretty much and just like showed up with no energy. So that was really super not smart to do, like for performance. But I guess it is similar to bodybuilding because we're just slowly starving ourselves too.
Yeah.
But it's way longer, you know. Like I could do the wrestling thing like 2 days, just drop that weight, drop that water weight. But like, man, prep, that will teach you who you are. You know what I mean? That will grow you some balls for sure.
Is the dieting on prep, is that hard for you? Like if you're candid with it, with everybody, do you struggle with the diet?
Okay, so I had a binge eating disorder for 6 years. That was my first 6 years of bodybuilding. And I like to say that bodybuilding started it, but it really was my own self-sabotage. And it took me a while to figure that out. I didn't feel like I was worthy of my goals. So I binge ate and held myself back to make sure that I never succeeded and reached those goals. And in my first show, I binged like a few times during that prep. And I didn't even want to do it, but I was at the point where I felt like I made it such a big deal in my head that I had to just get on stage. I had to just do it to know what it feels like, to know that it's not this big, scary thing that is never going to happen. Like, just do it, you know? And I'm glad I did because it was scary, but I did it, you know? And I feel like I performed well and everything went well. So that gave me a base to go on, you know, in the future and do more shows. But I did battle with binge eating even after that for a while. And I even started to doubt my ability to compete ever again, which is really sad. You know, I kind of let my mind win and I was like, maybe I'm just not made for this. But luckily I continued to keep fighting it. And the thing that actually stopped my binge eating was, weirdly enough, it was veganism. I was a vegan for 3 years. It was a different purpose for food. I just thought of it as like animals, which I hate to say, you know, because I'm not vegan anymore. Um, I truly still believe in it though, which is kind of fucked up. But um, yeah, so that thinking of food differently and eating different food around people who didn't agree with what I was doing, everybody hated that I was vegan. And for me to like still eat my vegan food around them was like a huge stepping stone for me. So then when I went back into bodybuilding, I ate my bodybuilding meals and it was like I had a few incidents where the binging kind of started to be in the back of my mind, but I really didn't binge after I turned vegan ever again. There was like in that 2021 prep, there was 2 times where I slipped on my diet. And one time it was like I had like 5 protein bars all at once. And then the other time was like a whole fuck ton of peanut butter. And those were like checkpoints in my mind where I'm like, no, we're not going back to that lifestyle. You know, like I proved to myself that I could overcome that. We're not going back there. So yeah, I'm really proud of where I am now with food and with dieting. Like I'm perfect all the time. Like I hate to like say like I'm perfect, but it took me so long to get here. And now I just eat my meals that I'm supposed to eat and I don't think about going off my plan ever. And it helps that I have no appetite right now. But you know, for a long time, I've been really, really good on my plan. So it's something that just means a lot to me because of how far I've come with that. You know, like that was going to be the reason I stopped bodybuilding. So yeah, definitely very proud.
No, that's awesome. There's so many females that you discover in this sport that have a history of some sort of eating disorder. And it really does, you know, yours was your veganism, but it does help. And I do think that's the lifestyle bodybuilding for, in the case for most, I can speak because I was a bulimic for 12 years. This literally saved the way that we eat now, saved me from binging and purging all the time. And I mean, it's a learned way of eating and it helps, it's healthy, it's benefits you.
Yeah.
And so for you, you know, and you're just a handful. I know there's thousands of girls that get into the sport and they have disordered eating. And I think that it is a great outlet when you're trying to get control over your food again, is to practice the sport of bodybuilding. You don't even have to compete, but just the eating patterns that most bodybuilders, you have a very balanced diet. You really do. It's higher protein, but you're still getting fats and you're still getting it's pretty much all natural foods too. It's the pick it, kill it, grow it. So it's not like you're putting processed shit in your body. So that's somebody too, is if you're listening and you're thinking about it, or you're struggling with an eating disorder, or you're a female, like try a bodybuilding style of eating. It's very boring, but it's a very sustainable eating lifestyle.
For me, it felt good to have control, like such good control of it after not being able to for so long. Like literally food controlled me for so long that now with bodybuilding, with it being so strict, if I'm not on my plan, I'm like, I don't feel good, like I'm irritable, like I'm not happy with myself. I have very high standards for myself. And so like to have that full control now, like that's my standard. And I like to stay to that, you know?
I feel like the mentality that you have now too, that's just the maturation through the sport. That's almost, I feel like that's what makes an amateur go to a pro, is when you get that, when you realize the seriousness of taking your food and your off season seriously, making sure your stress is under control. I mean, you literally demonstrated that to, all of us. Like, you're in meditation now. You don't think about going off your plan. Like, you realize your obstacles with your binge eating. Like, and I really feel like that's your time to get all that. Like, when you're an amateur, that's when you get all your shit out. That's when but if you want to
Right.
be, and as much as you still say that, you don't know if Olympia, it possibly, you know what, who knows, in 5-10 years down the road, you can be in the Olympia stage. It doesn't matter if you decided you didn't want to take certain compounds, but I just feel like your mindset is already trending in the right direction that it needs to be for you to go to that next step.
Thank you so much. And I'm not counting Olympia off the table. I'm just trying to be realistic with myself, and I don't know what's going to happen in my life, you know. But obviously it's a dream that I promised to myself in 2012, and I'm still working towards it. So it would mean the world to me to be on that stage. Oh, it makes me emotional just talking about it. So of course I still want it. But I'm not saying I promise, you know. I'm just saying maybe.
How old are you?
28.
Oh yeah, so you're a child within the bodybuilding sport. I mean, you got plenty of time. It's just a long game. I think, playing the long game it matters for both men and women. Um, and I think that's what's hard about bodybuilding for a lot of people, especially in today's climate, because everybody has the Amazon Prime mentality. They want something now. And bodybuilding is kind of the one thing left that, like, you have to put in the sweat equity over the years and pay your dues. And it's just a game of showing up, training, eating your meals, getting your sleep, hydrating, and doing that for a lot of months consecutively, before you're going to see the fruits of your labor. Shannon's in it, I'm in it, you're in it. Anybody who has a dream that they're slowly chipping away at, it's like climbing a mountain that you're only making a small little ascent each day, but it's progress. So you can
Definitely.
definitely get there if you just hold the vision, trust the process, and keep working. I think you're a good demonstration of what bodybuilding can give you outside of the things people focus on, like pro cards and pro wins and Olympia berths, is the maturation as a human. I had no structure to my life before I got into bodybuilding. I didn't have an eating disorder or any problems there. I just didn't really eat, and I ate a couple times a day, protein shakes, all that. So bodybuilding gave me structure and routine to follow. And then it taught me about hard work. And you've learned that too, where, your first prep will teach you a lot about yourself, because it's probably the hardest thing anyone's ever going to do is their first contest prep, because it's their first exposure. So of course they're going to glorify it a lot more to themselves. I know I did. And if you can, make those little mental maturations along the way of your own journey, you're going to be a much better human, regardless of what happens within the result of bodybuilding, placings, pro cards, any of that. So I always try to encourage people to, like, look for those wins within doing bodybuilding. If you're going to get into it from a competitive standpoint, if you're getting into it and the sole thing you're talking about is going pro or something even further, I'm not just going to discourage you, but you're going to miss a lot of what you can gain as a person along the way.
Yeah. That's been the most beautiful part of my journey and why I love bodybuilding so much. It has helped me to truly build my self-confidence, self-worth, And that came through discipline. It came through proving to myself I can do hard things repeatedly and not giving up on myself. When I started, I had very low self-worth, and I hated my body. I wanted to have a body that I was proud of. And I knew that if I could do that, and if I could build that discipline, then I would have to love the person that I am inside too. Like I just knew, like looking at these people who have these amazing physiques, I said, there's no way that they don't love themselves. The way they treat themselves every day to look like that, they have to. And they have to be face to face with the things that hold them back and say, no, that's not going to hold me back anymore. So it's literally been so transformative. And it's crazy to me to see the difference in myself from when I started to now. And I do give most of it to bodybuilding.
Have you dealt with negatives from choosing bodybuilding and continuing to choose it, like in terms of, I don't want to say like haters, but have you dealt with negative energy from people, both in person or online, or do you have a pretty good support system around you?
Yeah, I mean, I deal with the same hate, I think, that most female bodybuilders get, the manly comments and shit like that. But I'm super okay with myself, and I do not do it for anyone else but myself. So when I see those comments, I just think it's disrespectful. So if anything, that's the only reason it bothers me, because I would never say that to someone who's overweight or looks a way that I wouldn't want to look like. I would never say anything about that. So that's why it bothers me. But to me, it's so clear when somebody says something like that, that they're lacking something within themselves. Like they're just jealous. Like they're clearly lacking something. And for that, like I want to send them my love, because I know how that feels to not like who you are, you know? And I used to be a hater too. Why am I getting emotional? You know, like I used to be jealous of girls and like talk shit about girls and whatever, but that came from a place of me not feeling good enough in myself. And you know, now that I'm in a place where I do love myself, I'm comfortable in my body, I have only love for beautiful women, you know, any women doing anything that they love. And yeah, so when I see stuff like that, I'm just like, you need help.
Yeah, no.
But as far as my support, you know, the main people in my life do support me a lot. My mom is my number one fan. And I have had, you know, like exes in the past who mostly support me, but then when it got to like getting in the way of hanging out with friends or doing things, they kind of make me feel bad about it. And that's why we are no longer a thing. Because how can you not cheer me on when you see how happy, how passionate I am for this thing? Like love would support that, you know. So that's how I feel about that.
I will say with relationships, and T and I talked about this before, like it's very difficult if you are with somebody who's not a part of the sport at all. Because they, especially like, and, you know, I've done talks about this too, especially like when you're in prep, it's like you have tunnel vision and nothing else matters. And I will say that's one thing I always huge advocate is I have the best husband because he's a single parent while I'm in prep basically, and he takes care of my daughter and he totally supports me. But you know, I've been in your shoes where it's just like people don't understand the seriousness, and it's, oh, why can't you just have a bite of this? Or why do you have to be to bed by 9 o'clock? Why can't you stay out for one night? Or, you know, and it's just, those are the people that are either support you or they're going to derail you. And I'm sure there's plenty of potential bodybuilders that have been stuck in that where they want to please their partner and they just kind of veer off and go their other way. And that's one of those things is like, you can't, as a female, especially with how small of a sport it is, with us, it's one of those things where you will find the right man that's going to support you and
Yep.
it's gonna, you know, you can't change yourself for that. And I love that you have the mentality is like, no, if you don't support it, then get out of my way. And that's one of those things. So if you're listening and you're female and your man is not part of the sport and you are, red flag right there. You got to understand, like they're either with you and go through a prep with you and it's fine, but if someone can't even make it for a prep with you, then you gotta figure out your priorities.
That definitely will test the relationship to
It
the
will.
max and show you
I think
what
it,
it's
it
made
tests
of.
it tests all relationships. If you know,
Yeah.
if you want to know who's serious about you as a person and who's like about your growth, see who's in your camp at the start of a bodybuilding prep and who's there at the end, and pay attention to their attitudes. Now that doesn't, like, prep doesn't give you an excuse to be a total asshole and douchebag. I'll never, like, when people act like that, I get pissed because you're making bodybuilders look bad, men and women. Don't be a dick. You're choosing to do all this, but it's very clear who your real ones are based off of who lasts the whole prep and who's there at the end and their attitude towards it. As long as you weren't, you know, a total dick and disrespectful to them because you were having a bad day or you're hungry or whatever the case is, like, that'll show you who's really in your life and who, you know, in the off season and the time away from prep is where you make up for being absent in prep, because anybody who's going for something big within competitive bodybuilding, you're going to be absent. You're going to be tunnel vision. You're going to turn off. And my parents know when I'm in a prep, like, I don't have much to say. Don't call me unless there's something to talk about immediately. Like, don't check. I just want to be left alone. And that's very common amongst people who have big goals. And I've noticed that that's very common amongst people who are just like obsessed with getting better and progression. And that's what bodybuilding offers us, is a chance to progress and measure progression every single day. So sometimes you can run into social media posts or people who will try to make that mentality a negative, like going all in on something and pursuing something to that level of insanity is a negative. But I don't agree with those people. I think if you don't have something like that to go all in on and pursue, you're not living a full life, in my opinion. And that's fine, but I don't like to be critiqued. And I don't like when other people critique people for working really, really hard towards something.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up too. Is like, I mean, like, and I'm sure you do this too, Emily. Like, I mean, even when I'm in prep, I don't go to family events that I'm going to be irritated with. I'm not going to holidays if I know. I'll say this: I love bodybuilding. You guys all know that. I don't care. I can bring my food everywhere. But when you're in the sport, as long as I have, and I'm sure you guys have gotten this too, I don't like small talk about the sport. Like, I don't like talking to grandma about, oh, so what do you do again? Are you posing on stage with weights? Like, it's to the point where I've been in it for so long. Like, either you follow the sport or you don't. But and this might sound, I don't want to explain the sport to somebody. I don't want to sit there and explain to my Aunt Carl's boyfriend, 8 million different whatever. Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I know if I go to a family event now, because how I am, my threshold for just like taking some, especially when I'm like 4 to 6 weeks out, I'm just like, fuck everyone. I don't want to be here. So why put yourself in that situation? I say that way. I would have liked to be a pleasant person or reminded of that. So I just avoid that, or why are you eating chicken out of a bag? Why don't you just have this hot dog? Well, that's not on my diet. Well, why? Why can't, you know what I mean? So it's just like, thinking about it irritates me now. So I'm done.
No more of that. Yeah, I definitely become a hermit. I'm kind of a hermit anyway, but definitely during prep, I'm like, no, not doing anything, going anywhere, talking to anyone. I don't even smile. I realized that last time. Because out of nowhere, I smiled and I was like, I haven't done that in a long time.
Well, maybe work on smiling. Maybe let's not do the resting bitch face. Maybe let's smile a little bit more.
Should maybe get rid of the resting bitch face for a little bit. And
do you have any I know it's probably in Cameron's hands when you get on stage, but is there any like tentative plans for next year, later this year, anything for competing?
It's not going to be this year. He hasn't mentioned a show or anything. I really don't know, but I would personally like to do North Americans again and win.
Yeah.
What was the feedback? Did you get feedback from your last show? I know you placed 8th, and I know that from a standpoint, you probably know what you have to work on, but did you get feedback from the judges?
Yeah, it was bring my back up. And I didn't even know that my back was that bad. I really didn't even know. But then I look back and I'm like, whoa, I had like no back. But anyway, also like leanness, of course. I just wasn't lean enough. And then size overall. So I have done all of those except for obviously conditioning because it's not time yet. But yeah.
What was your stage weight by chance? Do you remember it for North Americans in 2022?
I think it was 135.
Okay.
Yeah. So I still have a little bit more to get off too. So I'm hoping for 7 to 10 pounds higher, but it's also going to be less because I wasn't all the way lean. So I don't know. I think I'd be happy with like 140.
How
How
tall
tall
are
are
you?
you?
5'5", 5'4" actually.
Oh, is that like class B? I don't know.
Honestly,
I'm
I
in
don't
class
remember.
C, and class C is 5'5" to 5'6.5".
I was with you though. Remember I was like next to you. So I
Then
don't
you
know.
probably were 5'5".
It's weird because I thought I was 5'5" and they measured me at 5'3", and then they're like, okay, stand up straight. And like I didn't even realize I was like all the way hunched over. And then they're like, okay, no, we got another inch out of you. You're 5'4". But yeah, that just shows my mindset. I was like so tired. But yeah, so I'm somewhere between 5'4" and 5'5". I don't really, depends on the day, I guess. Depends how much energy I have. But yeah,
Awesome.
I did want to mention on my prep in my prep for North Americans, someone sent me a video of you and I had never heard of you before. Shannon, talking to Shannon.
Oh,
But
Hey,
someone sent a video of you like posing like for North Americans. It literally said that and I was like, oh no, that's my competition. Like I was about to quit. Like I was in such a bad mood. I was like sending that video of you to like my mom. I was like, she's doing the show. Like I was like, she's definitely gonna beat me, but should I do it still?
See,
And
but you know what? You brought that up, and that's a huge thing because that is what a lot of women do. That is one of the things, and I always have to tell people this too: is social media is a curse and a blessing because it does show us like what people are bringing, but at the same time, like there's probably 30 people that were at that show that didn't even have a social media. You know what I mean? So it's almost like
yeah,
at the end of the day, like it's such an individualized sport. Like if you look at Olympia, look at the top 5 women's physique competitors. They all are stunning, but they all have such different physiques. And I think that's what makes the sport so interesting. And some people don't agree with it because it is a very biased, it is a very, in the moment subjective sport. But at the same time, I think it's awesome because you and I could come up there at the same level of leanness and they could like your look more than mine because you chose a better suit color, you have better posing, you might have better abs. And I think that's something that's really important is because I've been in the same boat where I'm like, oh shit, she's doing this show. I don't want, but at the same time, you have to keep that open mind. Like, who cares? Like, to be the best of the best, you're gonna have to go up against the best. And you have to keep that and be like, fuck it, you deserve to be up there with them. You're working just as hard. And that's where the mental fortitude for the sport comes, is like, yeah, good. I want you, you know what I mean? You'd rather go and do a show where you have 10 of the top best or go to the show where you're the only one, so you're going to place first. I mean, it's not
yeah,
gratifying.
it's not gonna feel good.
yeah.
The best of the worst, you know. Yeah, I definitely was proud of myself for still doing that. My outlook is definitely different now too. Like, bring on the best girls. I want
Yeah.
to place amongst the best. So
And I feel like this, just so you know, like the best girls, I feel like are the nicest girls. It's like the girls that are like the girls in the background that don't talk. It's like, oh, because I've met some really nasty girls backstage too. Keep that in mind, women listening. Like, I know, like, I do not deal with mean girls. Like, I have people I've met backstage. I'm like, nope, you were rude to me. I'm not talking to you again, and I'm done. Like, I only have enough joy and energy to spread for everyone. I'm not about that negativity shit anymore.
no, there's no point in talking to anybody like that anyway.
Yeah.
On that note, spread joy, be nice, be kind. Thank you for coming on, Emily. You were really candid and open, and I think everybody's going to really relate well with this one. I appreciate it. I know some people, men and women, kind of try to shy away from the hard stuff, but bodybuilding, the longer you're in it, the more you learn about yourself, and it's a journey. It truly is, and that's why it is key to embrace the journey and not focus on a destination, because that's where the gratification comes from. So I do appreciate it. I respect you. It's real. It's raw. It's real. For Emily Nosler, for Shannon, Seeley, I'm Tommy Stiles. Until next time, we're out of here.